Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here, and we're looking at JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, quote unquote, Volume 1 by Hirohiko Araki. So this is such an iconic series, what's left to say about it? Like, who hasn't had their take on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? But I want to do a review of it. I want to talk specifically about why, even if you're a fan of the anime and haven't checked out the manga, you should definitely check out this manga. And kind of my thesis is, I think Hirohiko Araki's art style, it's obviously very unique, and I think it's unique in the way that the sculptor Auguste Rodin was unique. So that's going to be my art history twist on it. So let's do the spoiler-free review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Well, number one, it's a cultural icon. Like, it influenced Kazuki Takahashi of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Hiroyuki Takei of Shaman King. Years before this was like the hip anime of the last couple of years, my roommate told me about this, and he explained that pretty much every anime you've ever seen has referenced JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at some point. Like, the influence on Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really obvious, down to like the style and the storytelling tropes, but even like Pokemon would have little references and nods to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So it's interesting just on the fact that it's such a big part of Japan, but it's also interesting based on what I've said about the art. It is a very unique art style with what's the appeal of it? I think the appeal of the art style is, I'll talk about Rodin now. The appeal of the art style is roughness being translated into something beautiful and stylish, in spite of kind of ugly weaknesses in Hirohiko Araki's style. So it's like he's figured out how to spot his mistakes and sort of like point his mistakes in the right direction. So Hirohiko Araki's problem is he's not that good at realistic figure drawing. We'll look at, I'll show you like an example of a really awkward pose, like this one. This is such an awkward little drawing where the arm and leg have just been posed very stiffly and stiffly. I don't know. But that's one of the weakest drawings in the whole thing. But then the funny thing about it is it's sort of like his weakness is his strength. He'll have like these stiff, kind of weird broad-shouldered figures. But then, as I'll show you later, he will figure out how to make that look stylish, and sort of like the weirdness of his characters becomes a big part of their charm and style and grace. And the reason this reminds me of Auguste Rodin is if you looked at Auguste Rodin's early sculpture work, he was a genius. He was a realist, at least in the category of Michelangelo. And then later, as Rodin got older and older and older, it's like his style became more and more expressive, more loose, more quick. So if he was making like really polished, nice, clean sculptures when he was young, when he was old, he was like slapping it together and like stretching it out, and you could see all his like little finger marks and everything. And it ended up looking cooler and more memorable because of how emotional it is. And like the hands of his figures would get super big, and they'd be grieving, and they'd have these monstrous hands and feet, and that helped them look sadder and more anguished, and it's dope. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I see it in that kind of category of art. It's a funky art, but the very funkiness of it is what gives it this warmth, and I dig it. So first off, what I like to do in these things is sort of show you things that are specific to the manga that the anime adaptation probably has, because my spoiler-free review is fun story, exciting. This is not for little kids. It's got some horror elements to it that are pretty scary. So, but I think those exist kind of in the context of bad guys doing bad things, and then the good guys bring justice to the bad guys. So I would recommend this for like older, mature readers, but lots of fun things to talk about. That's the spoiler-free review. Go get JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. You're going to have a blast. So now let's look at some little fun details. So fun detail number one is him talking about the idea of stands. And this is like the good idea fairy right here. In this book, a new ability called stands is introduced. Stands are psychic powers given a visible form and shape. Traditionally, these kinds of powers are shown with light and electrical effects, or after effects like crumbling buildings. I asked myself, how can I express this visible power? That's when I came up with stands. Now let's begin a new adventure with Jotaro and his friends. Dope. Adventure, good guys, bad guys, characters with flaws, yes. So the good idea fairy is taking a thing that's a common convention in, like boys' adventure stories. The characters have psychic powers. And then sort of thinking, well, how do I explain that to kids? How do I make that look interesting to kids, as opposed to just like having fireballs coming out of the guy's hands? And stands are really, really interesting. And even though this is such a popular series, I'm not sure I've seen anyone quite rip off or like it's weird that this hasn't become like a whole subgenre of thing where characters have stands next to them, because it's such a fascinating concept and it's so well illustrated. And they talk about like all his past work, like mystery, action, horror. And then, so the weird thing about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the reason I did the air quotes around Volume 1 is it doesn't start at the beginning of the story. And again, that's such a beautiful image. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about the detail work later. But what's interesting about this is it kind of skips over the first chunk of volumes, telling the story of some of the first JoJo's. They all are nicknamed JoJo, every member of this family. And so, because Hirohiko Araki cares about readers, he helps get us caught up, so we kind of know what's going on. And I would be interested to go back and read some of this backstory eventually, but for now it just kind of gets me into the swing of things. I understand who the family is and what the legacy of the family is and who the bad guy Dio is, and that's enough. Once I know that, then I'm ready to kind of jump into the new adventure. So good thing number one, you can jump in pretty easily. You don't necessarily have to read the first saga of it about Jonathan Joestar and Joseph Joestar. Look at that hat. I love it. And then Joseph Joestar appears as an older guy in this story. So they pick up with young Jotaro Kujo, who is a young, toxically masculine punk. What I love about this is it's a celebration of the good side and the bad side of toxic masculinity. So the toxic aspect of it is that he's rude, he's a ne'er-do-well, he's mean to his mom and rude to her. Oh, he's such a terrible young man, he's in jail, right? So it's all these bad things. But then, sort of like every great hero's journey, he has to kind of like discover himself. He has to figure out that being a bad person isn't rewarding, that he has to develop himself as a man and become a good man. And so then he has to discover how to like aim his toxic traits. So his toxic traits are that he's kind of violent and rude, and he figures out that he has to be able to point that anger at an evil person in defense of innocent people. And that's the great journey. It's that process that kind of forces him to become a good man. So that's really like, it's really like emotional. It speaks to a lot of young men. But then this is where Hirohiko Araki's art comes in. Hirohiko Araki is able to capture this emotional side of things that's almost hard to describe, and that's like this really intense, really alpha, really what would be the word for it? Like a young man who's on a dark path and has a darkness inside of him, but he's good enough to realize this, and he wants to control that. He wants to be a good man. He doesn't want to hurt people. And so then his grandfather and the amazing circumstances kind of become the thing that's going to kind of help him develop and become a good man. There's this great scene where he sees his grandpa and he's just facing off with him. Let me try to find that. Right, this says everything about it. Old Joseph Joestar shows up, and he looks Jotaro right in the eye, and they're just dead staring right into each other's eyes, and it's this intense face-off between big, tall men with broad shoulders. Yes, so the older generation challenges the younger generation and has to convince them to reach their full potential. And they're also great twisteroos where like one person, it's exactly the thing I talked about in my Dragon Ball Z video, or one of those. I like it when there are powers that people have to use strategically, and that's exactly the appeal of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. So he's got a pretty like useful stand with a nice ability. It's sort of like super fast and super strong, and it stands right next to him. So he can use it to like punch things and grab things. It's faster than a speeding bullet. He like grabbed the finger right off his grandpa's prosthetic limb. So he's got a pretty good useful power that's useful in a lot of circumstances. But then other people have different powers that aren't as kind of like Superman-y as that, but they challenge him in unique ways. So one guy might have a stand where its abilities can go super far away from him and fire kind of a shotgun effect. Joseph has martial arts abilities, and he has like this ability to see far away things and important enemies that they got to find, right? And Jotaro quickly learns that he's not the toughest guy on the planet. He immediately runs into good old, I think it's Adval here. Yeah, Avdol. And so Adval is like this dope black guy, right? And he's so smart, and he's so cool, and he's such in command of the situation, and he strategically kind of outwits Jotaro and convinces him, hey, I know you think you're super tough, but we understand, we know where you're coming from, and don't worry, we're not going to let you go out of control and hurt people with your power. So they kind of like have to put Jotaro in his place a little bit to convince them that they're worth following and they're worth joining. Okay, these drawings. So these drawings at the end of the chapters are the reason you should pick up this manga. This is everything that is important about an artist's style. So I'm going to borrow an idea from one of my art teachers that I think is true. So one of my art teachers, her idea was that everything you can tell about an artist's style probably emerges in childhood, that even in early childhood, our styles start to emerge. And some people are a little bit more tight and controlled, and some people are more loose and expressive. So what these little sketches are from Hirohiko, these are everything about his style explained in simple little doodles. So awkward, giant, weird hand, right? You see how that's kind of like not realistic? And it's just like quickly sketched out, yet it's just so elegant and it's so confident. Like this big wavy line going down there, and that just establishes the shape of his broad shoulders and his baggy clothes. And yeah, the hand is massive, but it's also at kind of like this jaunty angle, which gives this kind of like attitude of like bring it on to it, and these intense eyes, and then thick lines around his collar, and just like this little sketched out chain on him, but then also thin lines around his neck. This is a guy who can do a variety of line weights. He's very, very confident in just doing like a quick shape and then making that into something. And he does like really jankety weird things with his figures, but this gives them energy and it gives them kind of like this attitude and this expression. And so you remember that like weird drawing I showed you earlier, the kid running? Well, that's an awkward drawing, but then what Hirohiko Araki does that almost nobody does is insane action scenes and insane dynamic angles. So I might need to like explain this with my hands. So like this is a boring hand, right? Okay, now this is maybe like kind of an exciting low angle. This is kind of an exciting high angle. You know, here's like a karate chop, right? But do you see how that karate chop's kind of boring? Okay, so what Hirohiko Araki does is he puts rotation into his drawing. So it's not just that the character's, falling down, plop. It's that the character's spinning in midair while the camera is like clear up here and there's a branch, like at this angle, but then they're also moving at that angle. You feel like you are moving and falling through the sky. So I've described it. Now let's see if I can find some examples. This isn't exactly an example of it, but this is an example of a scene of them talking about exposition stuff. This is the bad guy, this is the history, and look at this. This is screaming like this is important. And there's even this cool thing where like there's this pattern of like Joseph's got the star on his neck and Mom's got the star on her neck and Jotaro's got the star on his neck, and now Dio, the bad guy, has the star on his neck because he has killed the great-great-grandfather and taken his body. Dio's such an evil guy. It's so dope because that's relating visually to what has gone before. And look at this figure drawing, like big muscles and big swirling belts and baggy pants that are like built with billowing cloaks and intense expressions with wavy lines. Energy. I was so excited, I turned off my phone. All right, we're already at 10 minutes, so I'm going to start moving ahead. Another one of these great figure drawings. Like just a few little quick black brush marks to get that shoulder and the ripple and the jaunty, kind of like confident, smart alecky body language. Man, but then also those little lines too that are just sketched out. That is just so confident. That's a guy who draws all the time. This is the one I was talking about. He's falling down the stairs, maybe to his death. So we are looking straight down, almost upside down. Now he's falling, but his arms out, his legs are out, and he's the psychic power, the stand ability is twisting forward to grab something. So not only is he falling, he's spiraling as he's falling, and I can feel it, and I feel like I'm sick, and I'm losing, what is it, like I'm spinning and losing my balance. Okay, there's Joseph. Look at that. Solid black just on the sunglasses, like a few little lines along the shoulder. They're stronger and different than everything else. This is the weirdness of it. Like, it's not that consistent, actually. Sometimes he'll have, like, line weights that are a little ugly and like one seems out of place, but then he makes it work because I think he just keeps refining it in the finished art, and he adds the detailing to things like the backgrounds and things like the armor and the little shading all across the big beefy muscles. That's the point. Is if you like 80s comics, don't look at this and say, oh, it's weeby, oh, it's Japanese, I don't like Japanese stuff. If you like 80s comics with big beefy muscle guys and like really cut chiseled features, this is your jam. Oh, there's another thesis in that. It's almost like he's so unique. I don't look at it and say, oh, this is an anime style. This is a manga style. This is Hirohiko Araki style with equal influence from Eastern and Western comics and a lot of Western superhero comics, I'm sure. Oh, golly. And yeah, I can't wait to watch the anime, but this is a comic that the warmth of this can only exist in a comic form because it's all about the lines and the energy and the waving and the undulation. Good grief. Why did I mark this? Okay, there's another one of those cool strategic battles. Another one of these strong, just like weird. It's weird, right? But my whole thesis is this weird drawing it's kind of like a glimpse into his sketchbook, right? And yeah, it's kind of ugly, it's kind of wonky, it's not really polished, but then look, he also does this on the same page, maybe with a photo reference, but isn't just like copy-pasting it and putting a photo filter over it. He's drawing it and giving it like this grunge and this energy that makes it feel realistic, and this is kind of a calm, the angle sort of straight on, but then later he'll have like the crazy angles because he's nuts. So much variety. It's another one of these. So here's Advil, right? Like just like one little line. There's his cloak. Who draws like that? That's the point. Have you ever seen a drawing like that? It's amazing. Okay, why did I mark this? Okay, so they're naming all the guys. Okay, another one of these. Look at that. Man. Like, okay, so quick little line drawing, then like the brush, and he just goes down and up like that. Like, that's just 2 seconds, and there's wrinkles in there. It's amazing. I cannot believe what a unique artist this is. But there are more polished artists. There are more detailed artists. There are people who like draw a human face more realistically, but no one draws like this. I think I marked that because, oh yeah, there is some scary, gross violence in it. Yeah, so not for kids. Okay. This is everything about the character. Everything about the character is he's young, he's really intense, he's really masculine, he's an alpha male, he's kind of a jerk, and he wants to be a good man. All of that in just one drawing, even like running out of ink at the bottom of that. My gosh, one strong black line across the chest to show the fold in his vest, and it kind of helps like break up this long white shape. It's instinctive. This is an artist who's drawn so much, and he's kind of like worked through the weirdness of his style, and now he can instinctively draw well. This is what every artist should be aiming for. And just the fact that you can see this variety is you can see how he then controls like his looseness and his weirdness in his polished finish art. And it's incredible. My gosh. And then it ends on like a cool cliffhanger, and I just can't wait to read volume 2. Okay, that's over 15 minutes. That's got to be it. So I don't care if you're a fan of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. You got to take another closer look at that manga. I think this manga is going to be well remembered for a long time because this is an example of an artist who crafted his own style. Anytime an artist invents his own style, you've got to look at that. I don't care if you hate the anime. You've got to look at artists who have created their own unique thing that no one else has done. I don't think anyone else since JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has done anything quite like this. So, Hirohiko Araki, the Auguste Rodin of the manga industry, a really great book for older, mature readers. And I will review more. Now that I've kind of made my point about Hirohiko Araki's style, I probably won't repeat that every video, but I will be reading all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because of that. Fantastic. Check it out. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. If you like these videos, like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell to receive notifications. Check out my Subscribestar. All of my subscribers on Subscribestar are thanked at the end of every video because I appreciate you guys. With that, I love you, and I'll catch you later.